Hey folks, here it is after the end of May already. Just uncovered our self-watering planters on our deck yesterday. They'd been covered under row cover that I made hoops for 2 weeks. We've been down hovering close to 30s, in the upper mid 30s for a few nights, and everything was covered up. So I just uncovered them, so everything's they're still kind of trying to get used to full sunlight after a couple weeks. But what I wanted to kind of concentrate a few videos on, now that I'm kind of back into the swing of it, is applying some of the techniques that we learned when we had acreage and big gardens and mini gardens and hoop houses and grew a lot of produce. Apply those same techniques to urban gardening. So what I'm doing today is I'm going to make a trellis, an arching trellis, like I made probably like 4 years ago. I did a video on how to make one. I think I did a couple of them. But I want to fit it in between the staircase. So the stairs here, on the inside, is 52 inches. And I've already set 2 earth boxes, one on each side on the outside. And I can take you around and show you that here in a little bit. But what I want is a hoop that'll fit on the inside of my staircase, 52 inches. So I've already bent one. Now this is the bender that I use that goes over a 4-foot raised bed, and you can also manipulate it, extend it, change it, the configuration a little bit, to do arching trellis anywhere from 4 feet to 5 feet. So I'm going to take you over to the trailer, and we're going to bend the other 1/2-inch conduit to match this one. So what I've done is what I did with the hoop house bender, the last video that I made, when I was bending 1-inch conduit and a more substantial bender. I just used some bar clamps and just clamped it to the trailer bed. I have holes drilled. In the past I just drilled it into my old trailer bed, but if I don't need to drill holes into the bed, I'm not going to. So this 1/2-inch stuff isn't all that strong, so it's easy enough to be held in place with just a couple clamps. So what I've done on this 1/2-inch conduit is measured up 20 inches on each end and then just marked it. So I'm going to start my bend at 20 inches. Just put that 20-inch mark right at the end of the bender. And then remember, like rowing a boat, pull it almost to the end of the bender, not past it, of course. And then remember again to keep the pipe flat on the trailer bed. That's really important. If it starts going up or down or whatever, you're going to end up with a curly shape that you don't want. So bend it, push it forward a foot or so, rowing a boat. Ooh, that's not the most pleasant sound in the world. Now, since we want 52 inches, we have to play with it a little bit. If I didn't bend it past the 20-inch mark at all, they might flare out a little too much. And we want vertical legs because we're going to add extensions onto these. So we want it as vertical as possible. So what I'm going to do now is, when I'm at the 20-inch mark, is just ever so slightly bend it past. You can always bend it more. You can de-bend it, but that's not always as easy. So then we're going to take it out, flip it around, and put the part that we already tweaked a little bit back in the bender. I said back in the bender. There we go. Ugh, it's a terrible sound. Okay, and once again, just ever so slightly tweak it. See where we're at here. Now the nice thing about working on a trailer bed is you can use it as a reference. I know that from the end, this edge of the trailer, to this slot between the last two boards is 52 inches. So it's looking a little bit, just bend it out just a little bit. That looks pretty good. What we're going to do is compare it with the one that we have. Now, looking at that, I'd say I overbent. I got a little overzealous on my tweaking here, so I don't know if you can see this. Let me move the camera. So, those of you who watched the video that I did on the hoop house, my trailer has rails that come down, so I just set this between those two vertical supports and then just push it back just ever so slightly. You could come up with other arrangements to de-tweak, but that works pretty good. So, yeah. So now we have two hoops, 52 inches outside distance, pretty much identical. Now we're gonna put some legs on it. Because I'm building this inside of a staircase and I only have 2 feet to work with, this is going to be different from the freestanding ones that I built in the past. They were 3 feet wide and they had legs that went down into the ground, and they were about 8 feet to the peak or so, I guess, before you stuff them in the ground. So what I have to do here is the top legs are going to sit up on the deck, and they're going to be secured to this post. I'll have to put some spacers in there. And then the bottom legs are going to be down on the bottom step, and they'll be secured to this post here. So the difference between the top deck and the bottom here is conveniently 12 inches. So the upper legs are going to be 50 inches and the lower legs will be 62. And that's going to give us, at the peak, about 8 feet. And I'm just shy of it, I guess, but that seems tall, and it's taller than it needs to be. I'm not even that tall. The reason for that is when you start growing things up here, and we've had grown melons in the past, and they start hanging down, you don't want to have to move all these fruits aside to get through there. So it's really kind of cool once it gets going. So I'm going to cut my legs, and then we're going to attach the mesh. And I'll take you over and show you the bender. So this bender's been around for a while. This is the one that I showed you about 4 years ago, probably even before that. One of my first probably tubing bender videos was featuring this bender. But this is one for 4-foot bed hoops that would be suitable for a 4-foot wide raised bed. Also for arbor hoops. And arbors generally are, the ones that I've been building are generally somewhere around 5 feet. So this thing is adaptable. You can change the arch a little bit by tweaking it out and tweaking the vertical portions at the 20 inches and get it to go anywhere ranging from 4 feet to 5 feet. So pretty adaptable. And then again, I wrote on the back, starting and ending the bend at 20 inches. So just a 2-foot wide piece of 3/4 inch plywood, probably about 2 foot by 8 inches high, I suppose, to start with, and then use the speed square and put some vertical lines every 6 inches, starting in the center, 7 inches up, put a little brad there. Go over 6 inches, go vertical 6 inches, tap a little brad right there, 6 inches over here, do the same thing, and then the final 6 inches at the end of the board, you're up just 3 1/4 inches. So 7 inches, 6 inches, 3 1/4. And then I just used a piece of the heavier duty metal strapping, but we're only bending 1/2 inch tubing, so just your regular metal strapping is suitable. And then I just bolt it with a 1/4 inch carriage bolt. And then you want the flat head on the underside, because you don't want this sticking into the bottom of the trailer. So that's really all there is to it. And then when I'm cutting my tubing, my 50 inch and 62 inch pieces, I'm just using a tubing bender that it works pretty slick. I've done it for years. I know that's not their intended use, but this is pretty soft metal. And it doesn't take very long, and it makes a nice clean cut. So the tubing then easily seats on the end of these, into the center of these couplers. These couplers that have set screws in them, and a pack of 5s on it. Now, back the time I bought these, probably 4 years ago, that 5-pack was like less than $2. So they work pretty slick. So we're going to cut our tubing and add the mesh. This is just 2 foot wide lawn fencing vinyl coated 2 inch by 3 inch mesh. It's not the stuff, I've never bought this before. I usually buy the heavier gauged 2 inch by 4 inch, but that's when I'm building 3 foot deep arbors. So it's spanning a greater distance, but I only have to go 2 feet, and I thought the black looked kind of nice. So it'll match our patio set. So then I'm going to cut some battens or some strips of wood that'll go over the mesh, and that'll just tie the whole thing together. So I'll show you that when we get to it. This would be the top side, the side that is going to be on the deck. So this is the 50 inch legs. And so what I just did is I attached the 50 inch extensions with my couplers and just laid it on the trailer deck, and then just kicked that mesh out on the driveway. Just kicked it out, and it lays fairly flat. And then I was just going to start, good little spring clamps, start it like 2 inches off the bottom at the top. It'll be 14 inches off the bottom on the lower one, but that's okay. So just spring clamped it there, and then just use cable ties. You want to make sure you use the black ones that are UV resistant about every foot, and just secured it, and then we'll go from there. My other trellises that I built, I mostly used cedar for the wooden slats that made the kind of the ladder kind of supports that tie the whole trellis together. But since this is a less substantial one, and it's going to be secured to the rails, it's not going to really be moving around that much. And so I started pricing lumber, and I was like, holy smokes, I could easily spend quite a bit for cedar. So I opted for the cheap, the frugal route, and I just bought a piece of lath, a couple bucks. And if you're careful, select carefully, and look for one that looks like it might behave itself if I rip it in half. So I figure 1 8-footer, it's 2.5 inches, ripped to 1 1/4 inches. That should be enough to support this 2 foot wide slab. So we'll see how this thing, how it behaves when I rip it. Sometimes wood doesn't behave like you think it will when you rip it in half lengthwise. not too bad. If you choose wisely, you can sometimes get away with the cheap stuff. So I'm just going to cut these into 2-foot lengths and drill some pilot holes, and then we'll secure those. But I'm going to stain them first. Just put this deck stain that I use, just a water-based deck stain, and that should give them a few more years of life. So we'll do that and then get back to you. After I attached the fencing on the one side, I just flipped it over and then attached it on the other side, just repeated the same process. So then I cut those slats, I stained them same color as the deck stain, and I affixed them about every 2 feet, starting about 3 feet up at the top. Now, because I'm putting this on a staircase, it's different from what you might do or what I would do if I was doing a freestanding arching trellis, but that's how I started it here. There's no need to have them down here. So about every 2 feet, and then I took some flat black spray paint and just painted all the tubing black before I attached the wooden slats. And then I just hauled the whole works over here and I just attached it to my rails, just using some brackets and some kind of homemade brackets and straps. I'll take you over here and show you how I attached this. At the top, being cheap, frugal, I just made some brackets out of just strapping and fixed one at the top and one at the bottom on each side at the top, and then down at the bottom I just, since it's right at the end of the bottom post, I just straightened one end of a 1/2 inch bracket and then just affix them at the top and the bottom that way. So once this thing focuses, I have an earth box now planted with zucchini on one side, and there's my tubing that connects it to the first earth box that now has some cucumbers planted in them, fed by this float box, which has my float valve in there, and then that is attached to my reservoir tank, which is a little small for feeding what it does. It feeds those 2 earth boxes and these 2 planters with the eggplant in them also. So I just have to fill it a little more frequently, but that's all right. At least I don't have to fill it every day. I'll take you around and show you what we have planted and such for those of you who are interested. For those of you who only wanted some guidance on building an arching trellis, yeah, you can go ahead and just shut me off right now. And those of you who are interested in seeing more about what we do for urban gardening in Duluth, Minnesota, I'll just take you around and show you a few other things. So as I said, this reservoir tank feeds with 3 different boxes, including that one down there, all of these planters. So these have all been started from seed. These are open pollinated tomato plants that we grew for years and years. These are a gold, and these are a giant, huge heirloom red tomato, just delicious, but they're a long season one. But I got the seeds to germinate after 3 years, and then some jalapenos and bell peppers, some more eggplant, more peppers, and then some, I hate to say it, I bought a cherry tomato plant and I bought another cucumber plant. Back here, these are 3 of our raised beds with our bed caps that I had designed previously, and there's videos on them, and there's actually a book on them. Worms in Our Beds, Raised Bed Gardening and Living Soil. And in this we have potatoes. As you can see, the deer proofing works pretty darn slick. Trouble is, squirrel proofing is kind of an issue here. It wasn't an issue at our other place. So on these I had to put some chicken wire around the bottom 2 feet, which kept the squirrels out. But I have potatoes planted here, potatoes in half of this bed, nothing here yet and nothing here yet. We're going to do some leaf lettuce in some succession planting of lettuces, and that's probably about it. We don't get all that much sun here, but the soil is nice. Worms are really doing their job here. They really loosened the soil up since last year.
So there you have it. A pretty attractive arching trellis that adds beauty and adds vertical growth to your container gardening, all for about 50 bucks. So the 1/2-inch conduit was on sale for $4.40 something, which is more than it was a few, 10 years ago or whatever, but still pretty reasonable. So you need 4 of them. So there's $18 in tubing. And then again, my slats, of course, I told you I went the cheap route. It was only about $2. And then the mesh was like 30 bucks for a 50-foot roll, but I only used a little over 20 feet. So I got quite a bit left over. So I was able to use some to cover my zucchini and cucumbers to keep the deer from at least easily nibbling on them. So I guess that's about it for now. I'd like to kind of keep you informed with what we're doing here to raise good, wonderful produce in an urban setting, going from 25 acres to 1/3 of an acre. So until next time, it's Mark again with Backwood Basics. So let's, even if you live in the city, let's grow together.